Welcome back, everybody, to the Miami Marlins franchise here on MLB The Show 23. We're going to be entering our final stretch leading up to the MLB draft and the All-Star break, which, of course, we'll be going through within the next couple of episodes. We're currently 47-33 here in season number 4, and we've got a big series on the road against the NL East leading Atlanta Braves on the road coming up. The Braves currently have a 3-game lead over us in the division. As of now, we are the number 1 wild card in the National League. Us and the Phillies have really been battling for that top spot. If we can make up some ground here in this division race, that'd be a big deal. Along with this series against Atlanta and making it up to the All-Star break, we've also got our MLB draft preview today. We're going to be talking about some of the more interesting prospects within the draft this year, guys who we've already gone over, and players who we have also not gone over as well. So it should be a lot of fun. Through the first half of the season, our offense has been one of the better units in baseball despite being super banged up. It feels like we've consistently had 2 to 3 position players at a time out. That still holds true right now with Nick Fortes and Jesus Sanchez both on the IL, but both players should be able to return fairly soon. Nick Fortes has been out for a while, and Austin Wells has been the main catcher to replace him. And in 50 games, the guy's been unbelievably good. He's hitting over 300, OPS near 900, with a WAR at 2.2. And if we average this out to a full season of around 130 games, he's looking at a WAR between 5 and 6, which is really impressive. Fortes was not playing well before he got injured. Obviously, he's been phenomenal over the last couple of years. But once Fortes returns, he's going to have to play well. Otherwise, Austin Wells could take over that catcher job with how well he has been performing. The pitching's been certainly more of a mixed bag. While we've had Sandy Alcantara and Edward Cabrera pitch very well, the rest of the rotation has not been good, and it's unfortunate because the bullpen has been really good. We've got a phenomenal bullpen, a phenomenal lineup. We have 2 ace-caliber pitchers, but the rest of the rotation's kind of a weak link, with Jesus Luzardo, Yuri Perez, and Gennaro Miller all not taking the leap up that we would have hoped. We do have some guys in the farm system who maybe we take a shot on, but realistically, for this year, I think our best move would likely to be acquiring another arm at the trade deadline. As we look at the block, there aren't a ton of pitching options here, but Hunter Greene at the top is very interesting. Greene is 26 years old with 2 more seasons of Major League team control, including this season. He's having a career year and has been phenomenal. He was really good last year as well, and it seems like he's really only getting better. I think him in our rotation would be really fun. Now, the problem with this is that he's going to cost a lot to get, understandably so, being that he's got another year of team control after this, and he's only getting better, and he's only 26 years old. He's got a lot of time. I looked through the player finder to look for some other options as well. I think Tarek Skubal with the Tigers would make a lot of sense. Get a legitimately good lefty in there. Skubal's a free agent at the end of the year, and the Tigers are really bad, so it probably would be in their best interest to trade him. Trevor Rogers does kind of fit the criteria of what we're looking for, which is ironic because we used him to get Luis Robert last year during the deadline. I think not getting Rogers is probably for the better, but I guess he's a name we keep our eye on. I think Luis Castillo, Jose Suarez, Joe Ryan, Casey Mize, these are all names to watch out for. Even Kevin Gossman, despite the fact that he's a little bit older at 35 years old. And maybe there's more options that come up leading up to the trade deadline, as we've still got a month to go before we get there. Let's now hop into this series against Atlanta. We've already had them for a 3-game set at home, and we won that series 2-1. In particular, the game that we played was Edward Cabrera against Kyle Wright, 2 Cy Young candidates, and we won that game 8-2, with Edward Cabrera significantly outperforming Kyle Wright, who allowed 5 runs in 4 1/3 innings, with all 5 of those runs being driven in by Woody Landry. Now, Kyle Wright is still ahead of Edward Cabrera in the Cy Young race, but we're going to look to change that here. We don't have Cabrera on the mound for this game. He'll be pitching in the second game, but we do have our ace, Sandy Alcantara, on the bump here against Kyle Wright. So it should be a really fun test for us in Atlanta against arguably the best team in baseball. Their lineup head to toe is obviously loaded. Ronald Acuna, Ozzie Albies, Pete Alonso, Austin Riley, Matt Olson. They have got stars galore on this roster, along with Kyle Wright, the National League leader in pitching WAR. So it should be a fun one here. The Braves rocking their City Connect jerseys as well. They're rocking the A, and hopefully we give them the L. Let's take a look at Kyle Wright, who in 16 starts is 11-4, 2.79 ERA, 1.04 WHIP. The numbers have come back down to earth a little bit over the last month since we played against him, but he's obviously still having a phenomenal year. Luis Arraez leads things off for the Marlins, and we are underway quickly. Arraez up the middle, gets that one by the diving glove of the shortstop, Zach Genton, and that'll go for a single. So a quick base runner for Miami, and that'll bring up last year's NL MVP, Jazz Chisholm, who crushes this ball into right field. A bat flip for Jazz Chisholm as it's a 2-run shot, and the Miami Marlins are on the board quickly here in the top of the first inning. That's how you get a massive series on the road against your division rival started. Jazz Chisholm with his 14th homer of the year, and the Marlins lead it 2-0. 2 away now for Luis Robert. Lines this one into left field. This one hit hard, and that one is gone. Another homer here in the top of the first inning for the Marlins, this time by Luis Robert, his 5th of the season, and it is a 3-0 game. The Marlins getting the bats active early against Kyle Wright in Atlanta. Let's get a look at Sandy Alcantara, who has not pitched as well as he has over previous season. He's been inconsistent throughout the year, but he has gotten into a groove over his last 4 or 5 starts as he strikes out Zach Genton, looking to retire the side now against Ronald Acuna Jr., who's having a phenomenal season. And Acuna belts this one into left field. That one is gone into the Marlins bullpen, and the Braves are on the board here in the first inning. Ronald Acuna with his 22nd homer of the year. By the way, he's hitting like .330. And so Atlanta is on the board. They'll only get one here as Pete Alonso strikes out. Busy first inning. We already have 3 homers today. Into the second now, Ryan Poles draws a walk, the rookie out of the University of Hofstra. Gavin Lux is now up, batting in the 9-hole. Good to have him healthy. He's missed most of the year. Ryan Poles is going to look to steal second. He is out of there. Good throw behind the dish by Sean Murphy. Part-time ball player, full-time sniper. Bottom 2, Austin Riley strikes out on the circle change. Ozzie Albies now rips this one into center field. The Marlins playing the shift would end up backfiring as Ozzie Albies is aboard. He's going to round second and head to third safely with a triple. The Marlins probably could have challenged that play at third base if not for a really bad throw by Jazz Chisholm. Matt Olson won't drive him in as he strikes out. Well, Sean Murphy, he might. This one is hit right into no man's land, but it is going to be caught by Gavin Lux. And so Sandy Alcantara makes it out of the inning as it remains 3-1 going into the third. Luis Arraez got a base hit and a run in his first at-bat of the game. His second one here, he hits this one well into right center field. It will one-hop off the wall. Arraez safely into second with a stand-up double, and the Marlins lead off the inning now with a runner in scoring position. That'll bring up Jazz Chisholm, who homered in his first at-bat of the game. He's got a 3-1 count here, already finds himself ahead, and he hits this one up the middle. That'll go for a base hit. If there were 2 outs, maybe the Marlins would consider sending Luis Arraez, but since there's nobody out, there's no reason to risk it. He's going to hold up at third. So now there's runners on the corners for Bo Bichette. Jams a pitch low and inside, grounded to second. Albies makes the play at first. That's the only out Atlanta will get as Luis Arraez will score, and it's now a 4-1 ball game. 2 away now for Luis Robert. He also homered in his first at-bat today. Goes down looking on the slurve. Nice pitch inside by Kyle Wright. The Marlins do add another run, though. They lead it 4-1. Bottom of the third now. The young outfielder Joel Miranda strikes out, and Zach Genton will join him. He goes down looking on the slider right down the middle. I don't know what type of pitch he was waiting for. That was the perfect pitch to hit. As we move into the fourth, Brian De La Cruz launches this one into left. A beautiful bat flip for De La Cruz. And the Marlins extend their lead. It's now 5-1. Brian De La Cruz continues his awesome season with his 15th homer of the year. He only went deep 11 times last year. De La Cruz got off to a hot start in April, and he hasn't really slowed down. He has just been fantastic all year long. Ryan Poles draws his second walk of the game. Poles is not going to look to steal second this time. Full count for Gavin Lux. Grounds it to first. And the Braves will get Ryan Poles and Gavin Lux out here anyway, as it is going to be a 3-6 3-double play. Still a good inning, though. The Marlins add another run, and we go bottom 4. Big meat Pete Alonso with a single into right field, despite a good defensive effort there at first base by Woody Landry, the Georgia native. Ozzie Albies goes down looking to wrap up the inning. 4 innings, 1 earned run allowed so far from Sandy Alcantara, who's had himself a pretty good game. Let's move into the 5th now. Luis Arraez up the middle. Is it going to drop? Yes, it does. Luis Arraez with his 3rd hit of the game. The Marlins lineup consistently hitting the ball well off of Kyle Wright, and he'll be taken out of the game, replaced by Marcus Stroman. First time that Wright played against the Marlins this year, he went 4 1/3 innings, allowing 5 runs. Today, he goes 4 innings and allows 5 runs, and that's only so far. What if Luis Arraez scores? Then it would be 6 earned runs allowed. Arraez won't be driven in by Jazz Chisholm. He checks his swing on the outside sinker. 1 away now for Bo Bichette. He has a full count. Bo checks his swing on the low slider. Umpire behind the plate says he went around. That'll bring up Woody Landry. He's had a quiet game so far, but he'll draw a walk here on the low slider. And so now there's 2 runners aboard for Luis Robert. 1-1 pitch. Robert hits this one into right center field. That one is going to drop, and Luis Arraez will score for a 3rd time today. Being able to get on base as a leadoff man is so crucial, and Luis Arraez, when he's gotten on, he is capitalized. The RBI single by Robert makes it 6-1, and the Marlins are going to drive in another run. It's an RBI single for Brian De La Cruz, his 2nd run driven in today, and it's now a 7-1 ball game. That'll bring up the catcher, Austin Wells. Hits it up the middle, and Ozzie Albies will look to make the play, and the throw to first is not in time. So the bases are loaded off of the infield single by Wells. Huge at bat here for Ryan Poles, who's drawn a pair of walks today. He's behind, though, 1-2, grounds it to 3rd. Austin Riley will field it cleanly, makes the throw over to 1st. And the Marlins, unsurprisingly, leave the bases loaded, as they usually do. But they did drive a couple runs in this inning, and they extend the lead as they are up 7-1, really dominating the Braves tonight. Sandy Alcantara continues to pitch well as he gets Matt Olson to go down on the 12-6. Nick Gordon up now, the brother of former Marlins All-Star D. Gordon, as this one is lined into left field. Robert slow to get to it at the wall, and Nick Gordon is aboard with a double. So the Braves get a runner here in scoring position with 2 away. That'll bring up Miranda, who strikes out on the sinker. Good inning from Sandy Alcantara, who really isn't showing signs of slowing down. If the Marlins are going to hold on to this big lead, though, they may not need Sandy to pitch for a whole lot longer. Into the 6th now. Gavin Lux rips this one into right as it goes off the wall. Lux digging for 2nd, and he slides in safely with a double. The Marlins start the inning with a runner in scoring position as the offense continues to flat out dominate. Luis Arraez is 3 for 3 today, and he will reach base again. He gets plunked, getting hit on the leg. 2 aboard, nobody out for Jazz Chisholm, who has a couple hits today. He's driven in 2. Instead, he will get 2 out here on the 6-4-3 double play. Not the best of at-bats, for sure. Bottom 6, Zach Genton leaves it off for the Braves. He'll go down on the fastball. Ronald Acuna now goes down on the circle change. We'll see if Alcantara can strike out the side as he faces off against Polar Bear Pete Alonso. 1-2, looking to fool him on the outside slider. 6 innings, 4 hits allowed, just 1 run. Great outing for Sandy Alcantara. His day will be done with the Marlins already leading pretty comfortably. If it was 2-1 or even 3-1, I think he would have stayed for at least 1 more inning. But since it's a 6-run game, he'll be replaced by Max Meyer out of the bullpen. Austin Riley looking to get his day started off not so well, and that proves to be the case. Riley hits it into right. That'll go for a leadoff double. And the Braves get an early runner in scoring position as they look to get back onto the board. Ozzie Albies lines it into center. Jazz Chisholm will not make the catch. I feel like he really could have caught that. But that'll go for a single for Ozzie, and there's runners on the corners for Matt Olson. He strikes out on the circle change. That'll bring up Sean Murphy. Got him looking on the fastball. Runners on the corners now, 2 away for the 9-hitter Nick Gordon. And he will drive him in as it's a single into left field. The Braves are back on the board for the first time since the first inning. It's now a 7-2 ball game. Let's move into the 8th now. Dylan Lee will come in for Atlanta. He's had a pretty good season out of the pen, 2.86 ERA. He'll face off against Gennaro Miller, coming off the bench as a pinch hitter, and Miller will make the most of his late game at bat with a base hit into left field. I feel like the Marlins very consistently today have gotten the leadoff man on in most innings today, and that has proven to be a really big deal. Ryan Poles with a base hit. Now there's 2 on and nobody out. Poles reaches base for a 3rd time today as the rookie continues to adjust to the big leagues quite well. Miami appears to be having some trouble driving those guys in, though, as Luis Arraez gets the rare strikeout. Jazz Chisholm up now, a little lefty-on-lefty crime. Jazz certainly not as good against left-handed pitching as he gets fooled by the outside slider. The Marlins offense is so good, but they're just not clutch. Into the bottom of the 8th now. Big meat, Polar Bear Pete. Alonso rips it into left. That one's gone. A 2-run shot for Pete Alonso, the 300th of his career, and his major league leading 33rd of the season as he passes Vladimir Guerrero Jr. for the most homers in all of baseball. It's now a 7-4 ball game, and now that it's kind of getting close again, Camilo Duvall will come out of the bullpen to replace Meyer. His day will start with a walk here of Ozzie Albies as the ball gets by Woody Landry, who has subbed in from first base over to catcher. Matt Olson's up now, grounds it to short. Jazz Chisholm will flip it over to second, and the Marlins get through the inning. But Atlanta scores 2 more. Miami's bullpen having some trouble here. Chris Flexen will come into the game here in the 9th for the Braves. He has not had a very good season with an ERA in the 6s as he will face off against Bo Bichette. He's had a quiet day, 0 for 4, but he rips a single into left field to start the inning. That's another inning where the Marlins get the leadoff runner aboard. That'll bring up Woody Landry, also quiet today, no hits up to this point. Gets a hanging pitch up in the zone and does not capitalize. Woody liked that pitch too, but instead it's a double play. 3-6-3 on the scorecard. That'll bring up Aurelvis Martinez entering the game off the bench. Grounds it down the third base line. Riley deflects it. Throw to first. Not in time. That'll be an infield single for Aurelvis Martinez. And so that'll bring up Brian De La Cruz, who's had a great game. Multiple hits, a homer, multiple RBIs, and he will get a double into left field. Martinez will look to score. He is safe. De La Cruz a triple shy of the cycle. Not that he'll probably get another at bat, being that we're in the 9th inning. And now that'll bring up Gennaro Miller. Hits this one high and deep into center field. Miranda at the track at the wall. It's gone! 2-run homer for Gennaro Miller, just the 2nd of the year. Ooh, gotta make sure you touch second base there, buddy. And the Marlins make it a 10-4 ball game. Great work there by Gennaro Miller as him and Tommy Lasorda are showing off their dance moves there at third base. Connor Prellick will come in to finish it off here in the bottom of the 9th inning as Jensen lines it into left. Gennaro Miller under it. He will make the play, and the Marlins win the first of 3 here in Atlanta, and they do so very convincingly, winning this one 10-4. Sandy Alcantara had a great start on the mound. The bullpen was a little shaky, but the offense had more than enough run support today. We hit the ball really well. Jazz Chisholm, 2 for 5 and a homer. Luis Robert, 2 for 4 and a homer. Brian De La Cruz, 3 for 5 with a homer. He drove in 2 runs. Gennaro Miller subbed into the game in the 8th inning. Still was very impactful, 2 for 2 with a homer himself. And then again, Sandy Alcantara only allowing 4 base runners all night in 6 innings. This Atlanta lineup is really good, and they got moving over the final few innings of the game, but it was too little too late with another rough Kyle Wright start against the Marlins. We'll simulate the rest of this series, see how we do here with Edward Cabrera and Jesus Luzardo on the mound. Unsurprisingly, we win the Edward Cabrera start, and just as unsurprisingly, we lose the Jesus Luzardo start. Still a good series, though. We take 2 of 3. We make up a little bit of ground, as we're now only 2.5 behind the Braves at the top of the division. Jesus Sanchez and Nick Fortes are both very close to coming back from their injuries, probably within the next week, as we simulate through a 4-game set against the Pirates, and then some games at home against the Angels. Nick Fortes is healthy, so first things first, we're going to send Ryan Poles back down to the minors. I will say Ryan Poles has been really good since he's been called up, and he's going to be back on the big league roster at some point this year. Another injury feels kind of inevitable with this team, to be completely honest, but we just don't really have a spot for him, so he's going to go back down to the minors. Nick Fortes will resume his duties as the starting catcher, but he's going to have to play well, otherwise Austin Wells is going to take over with how well he's played. Jesus Sanchez is also healthy, so we will be sending Kevin Alcantara down to the minors. Again, Kevin Alcantara's had a pretty good season since he was called up in late April, but we have nobody else to really send down with Jesus Sanchez back healthy. Again, I anticipate Alcantara will be back in the big leagues at some point this year, but we just don't really need him. The offense now is fully healthy for the first time since the first week of April. How about that? We ended up doing pretty well against the Pirates, taking 3 of 4. The game that really stands out is this first one that we won 17-0. The offense was unbelievable, but I'm honestly a little bit more excited about the fact that Gennaro Miller threw a complete game shutout. I have no clue why they kept him in the entire game. Should have taken him out after 5 or 6 innings, but he played really well. We did lose the first 2 games against the Angels, though, bringing us to 52-37, still 2.5 back of Atlanta in the division. So now let's go through our draft preview, talking about some of the more intriguing prospects in this year's draft. Of course, being that we made the playoffs last year for the first time in this series, we are not picking at the top half of the first round. Instead, we are picking at 20. Since we're picking at the back half of the first round, our scouting approach might change a little bit, but what's not going to change is the fact that we're looking for talented players to help out our baseball team. Our scouts seem to think that Darren Bush, a starting pitcher, is the best prospect in the entire draft. He looks really good. Problem is, we're not going to get him. So we have to look at other pitchers, and I think Enrique Quiñones, the Mexican 18-year-old righty, is a guy who the Marlins are really going to like. Enrique is not projected to go until probably the middle of the second round, where the Marlins do have a second-round pick. However, as we learned last year, teams seem to be able to find talent just as we do. So because of that, he's probably going to go a lot earlier than his 57th overall projection. And if the Marlins really want him, they're probably going to have to pick him in the first round. I think he's absolutely good enough to be the 20th pick, but on the flip side, there's plenty of pitching depth in this class, and that includes Dominic Rubio, the native of Canada, a player we have not talked about yet. Rubio grew up playing for Canadian teams. He recently moved to the state of Michigan, where he played his high school ball for his junior and senior seasons, and his stock has really improved, as he will likely be a top 100 pick. I think the upside with him does not scream third rounder, though. I think it screams top half of the first round type of talent. Now, I think he's got a little work to do. He's a little bit inconsistent. But if you look at the ceiling here with this player card, all of his per nines look good. He throws hard. He's got good breaking balls. I think the ceiling with Dominic Rubio is really, really high. I think Darryl St. Aud is another guy who looks like a total gem down the board. Now, he is also likely projected to go in the second round, but again, if the Marlins want him, they're probably going to have to pick him in the first round. His best per nine attribute is his walks per nine, and his second best per nine attribute is his hits per nine. That's a big deal. Those are two of the most important attributes to look for with pitchers. Walks per nine and hits per nine are by far, in my opinion, the most important per nines in this game, and St. Aud really passes the eye test with both of those. So because of that, he really fits the Marlins' criteria of what they're going to be looking for. Our scouts seem to think these pitchers that are projected to go in the second and third round are better than a lot of the guys in the first round, like David Calhoun, Lorenzo Chavez, and Ronald Park. I do think these three guys are all really good, though, and worthy of being first-rounders. Lorenzo Chavez, in particular, he is projected to be the 16th pick. Our scouts view him as the 20th best prospect in the draft, and I honestly think the scouts are kind of overthinking him a little bit. I think he's really, really good, and I would choose him probably before any of those middle-round pitchers, because I think the floor with him is a lot higher, and the ceiling is just as good. Now, he is 21 years old. He's a little bit older, but he's also a lot more polished as a player, and I think this is somebody who's going to be able to make his way up through the minors pretty quickly and be a big leaguer sooner rather than later. But it is worth noting that he is next year going to be the same age as Robbie Jones, who we drafted all the way back in Season 1. Pete Quisenberry and Adrian Irman are both solid later-round options. Irman, in particular, I think is really talented. He comes from Puerto Rico. He moved up to Massachusetts before his freshman year of high school. He's been playing there ever since. We took a look at him at the international circuit this past spring with the Puerto Rican under-18 national team, and he was really impressive. He does not allow the lawn ball. That's certainly his best attribute, very similar to that of Edward Cabrera, who is better than anybody in the major leagues in terms of keeping the ball in the ballpark. I think it's a lot easier to find pitching talent as opposed to hitting talent in this game, and again this year there are plenty of good pitching options down the board. Let's go to the bullpen now, and it's normally against my philosophy to draft relievers early. Now, we broke our own rule last year, drafting Adolfo Jimenez in the second round, and we might break our own rule again with Andres Vina from Venezuela. If we want Vina, we would have to do it with our top pick at the 20th overall selection, but I honestly think it might be worth it. Andres Vina is one of the most pro-ready prospects I have really seen through all 4 seasons of scouting in this series. This is a guy who's going to be able to join our bullpen pretty much right away next season. Yes, he is 22 years old, which is a little bit older for a draft prospect, but I think he's going to be very good right off the bat. I think the ceiling is pretty high. I think he could have an ERA in the 2s next season. That's how good he is. Let's look at the position players now. Catcher is certainly a weird position on our team with Nick Fortez's struggles this year and the rise of Austin Wells. I do like Alexis Ramirez and Roberto Estrada. I think both of them are quite solid as prospects. Ramirez in particular looks quite good. At first base, Francisco Bruno might be the best offensive prospect in this draft. We're not going to have a shot at landing him, so I want to look at Danny Gabriel instead, a 19-year-old from Pennsylvania. We took a look at him in the international circuit this winter, and he was really impressive. This is an all-around bat, very similar in a way to Ryan Poles when we drafted him a couple years ago. Obviously, Poles was a little bit older, but Danny Gabriel really doesn't have many major weaknesses. He's got a really nice swing, good contact, good power, pretty good plate skills for a young guy. And I think adding another impact bat like him in the farm system would be really nice. Now, he does only really play first base, and we are loaded in our farm system at first base, but I do think he does have the defensive talent to maybe move over to another position. At second base, we talked about Elliot Ramirez a little bit ago. Honestly, I've kind of soured on Ramirez a little bit. I don't think he's a bad prospect, but I just don't think he's worth it with the 20th overall pick. There are some guys at third base, though, who I think would be worth the 20th pick, and that includes Ronald Rodriguez, another native of Puerto Rico, moved to the States. He's playing in California. We got to look at him in the international circuit, and he was really impressive. He hits lefties super well, which we need more of in our farm system. He hits righties at a fairly solid level, too, and he plays pretty good defense at the hot corner. I think he's got a pretty good all-around skill set as somebody who can hit for contact, he can hit for power, he's got a good glove. His arm really isn't great. Maybe he moves over to second base long term, but other than that, I really like his game, and I think he'd be a pretty good pick with the 20th overall selection if he falls. Problem is, I'd be willing to bet he doesn't. Brian Sanchez is another intriguing player. I honestly think he's a little bit better offensively as opposed to Ronald Rodriguez. He's not as well-rounded defensively or athletically, but I think his swing right now is a little bit more refined. He is also really good against left-handed pitching. He can hit for both contact and power, and I think he absolutely could be worth the 20th overall selection in this draft. I think it's a lot more likely that he were to fall to our pick as opposed to Ronald Rodriguez, but it's still not overly likely. A gem to watch down the board, though, is William Ford. We just recently scouted him, I think in the 3rd or 4th round. He could be a pretty good pick. As we move over to shortstop, Gustavo Magana is arguably the best position prospect in this draft. He did not pass his physical, though, so that could be something to monitor if he slips. I do really like Juan Figueroa with the 20th overall pick. He's a big 6'3" switch-hitting shortstop, and while I wouldn't necessarily compare him fully as a player to Ronald Andino, I think picking him does have some similarities. Obviously, being a shortstop defensively is certainly the name of Figueroa's game. He's a very good defender. His arm is arguably the best in the entire class, and I think that gives him the versatility to play third and possibly the outfield in the future as well. He's got really good speed as well. It's just his offensive game that needs a lot of work. I think he has more contact than Ronald Andino had when he entered the draft, but I think Figueroa's power is also quite a bit worse than Ronald Andino's when he entered the draft. We used a top 11 pick, though, on Ronald Andino, so if we're willing to use that type of capital on a guy like Andino, using the 20th pick on Figueroa is very possible. I think Evan Bird as well is an interesting wild card. He did not pass his physical, though, but he is an intriguing player. And then as we move into the outfield, our scouts have grown very fondly of Satchel Allert, an 18-year-old outfielder from Maryland. I think Allert could be the type of guy who you put at the top of your order. This is the type of guy who knows how to get on base. He hits for good contact. He doesn't strike out a whole lot. He's got pretty good plate discipline for his age. The power really isn't there, but we've got plenty of guys in the farm system who have a high power tool. So getting a guy like Allert, who I think in the long term would be best suited to be the number 1 or number 2 hitter in the lineup, I think having a guy like that's going to be really useful. He's a good defensive player. He's got an average arm, not bad, and he's pretty fast as well. Kendrick Pettit down the board is not a bad option either. You've also got Mario Marin, the projected number 1 pick, who our scouts kind of think is a bust. If his name had an L and he was Mario Marlin, I think our scouts would be a lot higher on him, though. At center field, you've got Eduardo Palmeiro out of the University of South Carolina, high floor outfielder. And then as we move over to right field, we've got the Mora brothers, Leonardo and Justin. Leonardo is certainly the more highly regarded player of the two. He's younger. He's a little bit better right now, but I actually think Justin Mora has more upside. You'd think the older brother would not be the one who's more raw and not be the one who is more upside. But here we are. That's the case with Justin Mora. He's a switch-hitting outfielder who is a little bit raw. He is not as polished as his younger brother, which, again, is a little bit of a surprise considering he's 3 years older. But he does have more work to do. But I also think he has more overall physical talent. Solid contact hitter. Power needs to improve, but it has gotten a lot better over the last year. Good arm, solid defense, good speed. And him being a switch hitter certainly helps as well. So that's the draft class. It's a really fun and intriguing group of players. Let me know who you guys would like to see the Marlins draft down below in the comments in the next episode for the 2026 MLB draft. That'll wrap this one up. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out.